What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best builds in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. This setup's main focus is built around the Galvanic shards and the shockbuster rounds, that both act as the shotgun skills, which as you can see from the gameplay can melt a ton of enemies in split seconds. This is currently for sure the best mercenary build in the game, as not only you can do massive amounts of damage, but also in the endgame with decent enough gear you can reach about 15,000 shield, which will turn you into an unstoppable melting machine. Our playstyle is built around the shock and the chain lightning, as Galvanic shards have an amazing clear speed, coming from the chains and the forks. Then the shock burst rounds have an insane single target damage, but will require shock. So that's why we consistently use the storm color arrow to get that crazy AoE buff and much more. If you want to use the crossbow as a shotgun and destroy enemies in seconds, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build. And for the main class I have chosen to go with the mercenary, and our ascendancy is the witchhunter. Then for the first skill we have the Galvanic shards with support gem called the martial tempo, fork, primal armament and long shot. Then second, we got the shockbuster rounds with concentrated effect, lightning infusion, heft and elemental focus. Then next we got the storm color arrow with the conduction, fast forward, overcharge and the lightning exposure. And next we have the emergency reload with ingenuity and premeditation. Next up we have the herald of the thunder with vitality, cannibalism and innervate. Next we got the cast on shock with voltaic mark, conductivity, persistence and impetus. Then for one of the last ones we have the Ripfire Ballista with Font of Rage, Font of Blood and Ancestral Urgency. And finally for the last one we are using the Sorcery Ward with Lightning Mastery, Fire Mastery and the Cold Mastery. Most of this setup is structured around using the Galvanic shards and the Shock Burst rounds to delete enemies in seconds. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this armor and evasion node, then go like this until we get a battle hardened, feel no pain and a hard to kill. Next we want to keep moving forwards and get this whole thing, as well as this quick change act. Next up we want to go all the way to the end, and now move to the right and get both these lightning nodes called the lightning rod and the flash storm. Next up we want to circle back a little, and this time go to the left, all the way to here until we get to the resolute technique. And this keystone is very important, which I will explain in just a second. And then from here we can go back all the way from where we left off, and then just keep going right, and from this point just unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the obsessive rituals, then next get ceremonial ablution, then third we want the zealous inquisition, and then finally we want to go with the pitiless killer. Next up we have the atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our mercenary build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit of points into the farming boss maps or the essences. So when we start we want to first of all get to the bottom left side like this. Then from here we go until we get all the way to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then next we get back to the middle, and this time take the top right side and get all of these passives. And then when all of these are done, then now we go again back to the middle, and this time take the middle path and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forlorn Crossbow with crit and weapon speed. Our main goal here is to get a high DPS or hybrid physical and lightning damage setup. Also, a fast attack speed and low reload time is important as well. And for bonus stats we want physical damage, lightning damage, attack speed, life per enemy hit, and plus levels to all projectile skills. Then for the helmet we have the expert shielded helm with armor and evasion. And for bonus stats we got increased armor and evasion, then even more armor, even more evasion and max life. Then for chest we have the expert scale mail with the armor and evasion. And for bonuses we want increased armor and evasion, even more evasion rating and max life. Then for the belt we have the plate belt with a lot of armor and max life. As I mentioned at the beginning, we can get up to 15,000 armor. And as we're using the leather bound gauntlets node, that gives us even more evasion per every single armor stat, so this is incredibly useful for our build. Then for the gloves we got the expert molded mitts with armor, and for more we need even more increased armor, max life and increased attack speed. Then for boots we're using the expert stack sabotons with the armor and evasion. And for more we got increased movement speed, max life and increased armor and evasion. Then for our first ring we got the Death Rush. The main goal here is to find rings with added lightning damage, or if not then physical damage is also fine. However, this one is not mandatory, and you can choose other rings as well. But if you're looking for the best one in the slot, then this one for sure is the best, as it gives us insane amount of evasion and accuracy. Then also 5% life leech, and we also gain onslaught after every kill. While on the second one we have the amethyst ring with chaos resistance, and for more we want lightning damage and max life. And then finally for the amulet we got the lapis amulet with intelligence, and for more we want spirit, armor, max life, even more chaos resistances, and plus levels to all projectile skills. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Then next we have runes. During early item progression, most gear is socketed with resistant runes, like the Desert Rune, Glacial Rune or the Storm Rune. However, once your elemental resistances have been capped, and elemental resistances are no longer necessary, then you want to opt in to increase your maximum life with body runes or consider socketing a soul core. So on our weapon we're using the Iron Rune. Then on the helmet we have the Glacial Rune, and then lastly on the rest of our equipment we're using the Storm Rune. And now finally let's quickly take a look at how this build will work, and I will give you 2 distinct rotations. So one for mapping / AoV mob farming, and then the second one for bosses. So first up we have our AoV rotation, and for most weak enemies you can just simply use the Galvanic shards by themselves, and it will already destroy 99% of the most enemies. However, if you run into a big stronger pack, then we again start with the Galvanic shards to proc them, but then afterwards use the shock burst rounds and blast them down even further. And then finally, if they're very tanky, then you can also use the emergency reload for bigger damage boost, but this will really depend on each situation separately. Or then for the second one we got our boss rotation, and this time we want to use the Stormcaller arrow to start proccing our shock. Then next we want to use the shock burst rounds with the emergency reload, and this combo should completely obliterate any monster. And then lastly we can also use the Ripwire Ballista before the boss spawns to get some extra free rage, but again this is very optional. This setup's main focus is to run and press from 1 to 2 skills and then target big enemy groups to then weaken them and explode. One of the most powerful skills that we have in our arsenal is the Shockwave Totem, and as you can see from the gameplay, we are just running into the enemies and one-shotting them without even trying. Also, our Ancestral Warrior Totem and the Scavenge Plating makes the most out of this by effectively extending the damage of this hit many times over, in order to kill big targets like the bosses or tanky rare monsters. Of course, like most melee builds, the armor explosion was nerfed, but our particular setup wasn't impacted as much as other melee builds, so currently this is by far one of the best warrior builds in the game. If you are looking for a powerful auto AoV machine to target enemies and delete them in split seconds, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the warrior, and our ascendancy is the Warbringer. Then for the first skill we have the Mace Strike with the support gem called the Rage, Armor Explosion, Magnified Effect and the Primal Armament. And even after the new changes on how the Armor Breaker works, the Mace Strike still works perfectly fine, as long as you use it with the Cultist Great Hammer. Then second we got the Shockwave Totem with Inspiration, Close Combat and Overpower. Then next we got the Scavenge Plating with the Precision, Vitality and Clarity. And next we have the Ancestral Warrior Totem with the Sunder, Super Critical and Overabundance. Next up we have the Time of the Need with Fast Forward, Herbalism and Clarity. And finally, for the last one, we are using the Hammer of the Gods with Fist of War, Concentrated Effect, Exploit Weakness and Heft. Most of this setup is structured around using the Shockwave Totem and the Mage Strike to delete enemies in split seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. And as our build is already super broken, so we don't have to use more than these 6 active skill gems. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this melee damage node, and then go like this until we get all of these 4. So Brutal, Smash, Sturdy Metal and Relentless. Then next up we want to go to this top right side like this, and then go to the left until we get this whole thing, so Ancestral Reach and the Supportive Ancestors. Next we circle back a little, and this time keep going until we reach the Devastation node. Then next up we keep going and take the right side, and then keep going more until we get both of these, so Carving Earth and Hardened Wood. Then now keep moving forwards until the end, and from here we want to get both of these totem nodes. Which side you choose first doesn't really matter as long as you get both of them. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, you just simply want to fulfill your attribute requirements to gear and skill gems, and then spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Anvil's Weight, then second get the Imploding Impacts, then third we want the Answered Call, and then finally for the fourth option go with the Wooden Wall. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus stats that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our warrior build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into farming boss maps or essences. So when we start, we want to first of all get to this bottom right side like this. Then from here we want to go until we get all the way to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then next we go back to the middle, and this time take the bottom left side and get all of these passives. And then when all of these are done, then now we go again to the middle and now take the middle path and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Cultist Great Hammer, which is special because its base stat does that our strike now deals splash damage to the targets within 1.8 meter range. And as I said, after the new changes to how the armor breaker works, the Mage Strike will now still work perfectly fine, but you specifically have to use this weapon, or otherwise switch the Mage Strike skill for something different like the Stampede. And then for bonus stats we want increased physical damage, more armor and more levels of all melee skills. Then for the helmet we have the Warrior Great Helm with armor, and for more we want max life, more accuracy, more intelligence and fire resistance. Then for chest we have the advanced full plate with armor, and for more we need max life, armor and cold resistance. Then for the belt we have the Rawhide belt with 20% quicker flask recovery. And for bonus stats we want max life, more armor and +2 to charm slots. Then for gloves we got the Intreset gloves with energy shield, and for more we need max life, max mana and more levels to all melee skills. Then for boots we are using the advanced bronze greaves with armor, and for more we for sure want increased movement speed, and then also max life and resistances like cold and fire. Then for our first ring we got the ruby ring with fire resistance, and for more we'd want add physical damage, more intelligence and lightning resistance. While on the second one we have the topaz ring with lightning resistance, and for more we need max life, max mana, more strength and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the crimson amulet with life regen per second, and for more we want max life, more armor, more dexterity and fire resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Then next we have runes. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And to be honest, because of our setup, this build will be extremely powerful, no matter in what order you use your skills. But if you're interested in the most optimized damage rotation, then here it is. So for both clearing and bossing, you want to place down your Shockwave Totem, and Ancestral Warrior, which is linked with the Sunder Totem. and then you can also use the Mace Strike to get a bit of extra damage in, and then later to generate rage as well. And finally, when you are at high tier maps and at the full endgame, you'll also be wanting to use the Hammer of the Gods on stunned bosses. But since it relies on having more than just plus levels to all melee skills on your weapon, so it might not deal as much damage for you as it does for other builds. And that's why our main objective will be to focusing on crazy AoE damage and less at single targets. This setup's main focus is to lock down your enemies with quick freezes that last a long time. Even bosses are vulnerable to being frozen, and we can just lay down insane amount of DPS while they're stuck doing no damage. Your main gameplay loop will revolve around using the Ice Strike to close the gap between the enemies. Then drop the Tempest Belt to help you do more damage, and then activate your Charged Staff, Ice Strike and the Shattering Palm. If you're looking for the most powerful monk build that freezes and builds upon insane attack speed and cold damage, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the monk, and our ascendancy is the invoker. Then for the first skill we have the Ice Strike with support gems such as the Cold Infusion, Martial Tempo, Crescendo, Primal, Armament and Inspiration. Then second we got the Shattering Palm with Execute, Blind and the Ice Bite. Then next we got the Herald of the Ice with Magnified Effect, Cold Mastery and Elemental Focus. Next we have the Ghost Dance with the Fast Forward and Clarity. Next up we have the Charged Staff with the Perpetual Charge, Persistence and Maim. Then for one of the last ones we got the Unbound Avatar with Fire Mastery and the Lightning Mastery. Then next we have the Charge Infusion with no support gems. Next up we got the Tempest Belt with Rage, Heavy Swing, Glacianation and Overabundance. Then for one of the last ones we have the Wind Dancer with Culling Strike, Cannibalism and Vitality. And finally for the last one we're using the Combat Frenzy with Profusion and Precision. Most of this setup is structured around using the Ice Strike and the Tempest Belt to delete enemies in split seconds. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their speed and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the skill speed node. Then go like this until we get these three, so Flow like Water, Mindful Awareness and the Step like Mist. Then next we keep continuing going like this, and take all of these, so the Flow State, Crashing Wave, then also Moment of Truth and finally the Conservative Casting. Next we move forwards until we are here, and then we take the Killer Instinct and the Tenfold Attacks. Then next we now take the left side and keep going until this half circle, while on our way taking all of these blue nodes, as well as the Resonance Keystone, and then stopping at this Deep Trance node. Then now we want to circle back a little, and keep going up top until we get to this Spectral Ward. Then afterwards we go till the end, and now take the right side, and then get all of these nodes that you can see right here. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Lead Me Through the Grace. Then second, get and Protect Me from Harm. Then third, we want to get I Am the Blizzard. And then finally for the last one we want an I Shall Rage. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that will spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our Ice Strike Monk build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into farming boss maps or the essences. Our Monk build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into farming boss maps or the essences. So when we start, we want to first of all get to this bottom right side like this. Then from here we can go until we get all the way to this point. Then next we get back to the middle and this time take the bottom left side. And get all of these passives until this circle. And then when all of these are done, then we go again to the middle. And this time take the middle part. And unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Slicing Quarterstaff with the bonus stats like the increased physical damage, adds more to physical damage, more accuracy, increased crit chance and attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Veiled Mask with evasion and energy shield. And for extras we want more increased evasion and energy shield. Then also max life and mana. And finally any type of resistance like fire or cold. Then for chest we have the Expert Scalper's Jacket with evasion and energy shield. And for more we want evasion rating, max energy shield, reduced attribute requirements and chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the utility belt with 20% quicker flask recovery. And for bonus stats we want max life, cold and lightning resistance. Then for the gloves we got the advanced spiral warp with max life, evasion and energy shield, increased attack speed and fire and cold resistance. Then for boots we're using the expert frayed shoes with evasion and energy shield. And for more we for sure want the increased movement speed, then also max life and mana, and if possible then lightning resistance. Then for our first and second ring we got the same one, so we are going with the amethyst ring, as its base stat gives chaos resistance, and as chaos resistance is not that easy to get, so this is the best place to get free resistance. And then for more we want accuracy, more dexterity and more intelligence. And then finally for amulet we got the azure amulet with increased mana regen, and for more we need accuracy, plus more levels to all spell skills and cold or lightning resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work, and I will show you 2 rotations. So first up we have a very basic rotation, which is meant to clear big monster groups and just weak enemies. So all that we want to do is use the Shattering Palm and then follow that up with the Ice Strikes. The Shattering Palm in this case will act as the first engage mobility tool and to increase our crit rate, so then we can simply spam the Ice Strikes and obliterate enemies in few seconds. Or then the second rotation we mainly use against single targets and bosses. So this time we want to start with using the Ice Strike 4 times. Then next we use the Tempest Belt. Then afterwards 4 more Ice Strikes. Then Charge Staff. Then again 1 more Tempest Belt. And now finally you can keep spamming the Ice Strikes as much as possible. The main idea behind this is to use the Tempest Belt as a buffing tool, because it gives us a lot of damage and some extra attack range buff, so then we can use our Ice Strikes and the Charge Staff as our main DPS skills, and then just rinse and repeat. This build is extremely powerful, so no matter what you do, if you build it right, then you will be doing crazy amount of damage numbers. But if you wanted to know the most optimized skill rotation, then here they are. This setup is known as the Grenade Gambling Legionnaire build that detonates gas grenades with a variety of detonator skills, such as the Explosive Shot or the Explosive Grenade, to create screen-wide explosions that can one-shot massive amounts of enemy groups. Offensively, we will be using the Gem-Studded Ascendancy, which will allow us to use 2 copies of any support gem, which greatly will improve our clear speed, utility, and single target damage. And then defensively, we get access to efficient armor evasion scaling, life recovery, and maximum resistance scaling or strength stacking. So when we combine all of this, we then can create this amazing build that has insane clearing speed and with this type of run and gun playstyle. So let me show you the build. And for the main class, we have the mercenary, and our ascendancy is the Gambling Legionnaire. Then for the first skill we have the Gas Grenade with support gems such as the Scatter Shot, Elemental Focus, Magnified Effect, Payload and Fire Infusion. Then second we got the Explosive Shot with Fast Forward, Primal Ornament, Magnified Effect and Payload. Then next we got the Oil Grenade with Encumbrance, Strip Away, Maim and Despoiler. Next we have the Explosive Shot with Nimble Reload, Martial Tempo and Assault Thief. Next we are also using the Flash Grenade with Assault Thief, Overpower, Discombobulate and the Heft. Next we have the Artillery Ballista with Ancestral Urgency, Fount of Rage and the Fount of Mana. Then we got the Wind Dancer with the Clarity, Cannibalism and the Precision. And finally for our last one we got the Alchemist Boon with no support gems. Most of this setup is structured around using the grenades to instantly delete enemies. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their area and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guides. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this projectile damage node, and make our way like this until we get the Remorseless and the Volatile Cataclysm. Then now we continue going down here and only stop at this circle, and then we get this entire thing except this one single node. Then from here we continue making our way till this point, and then where this path splits we want to take the left, and then get these two called the Authority and the Crushing Judgment. Then afterwards we want to circle back a little and get all of these nodes that you can see right here. And then from this point and onwards we can make our way to the left side and get the rest of these nodes by using this same and exact path. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning, you want to unlock the integrated efficiency. Then next we take this, the gem studded, which will massively improve our build by giving us the option to use 2 same type of copy support gems. Then next we want to get the thematical infusion, that increases maximum cold, fire and lightning resistances. And then lastly we will take the adaptive capability, as most players can run into a gem attribute requirement problem, so we can solve it by getting this node. In POE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your points recklessly. Of course, you can refund your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you are following this build, then make sure not to deviate from it, as some of the decisions that I made might not make sense at first, but is going to definitely pay off later. So feel free to use this exact same path as I have right here. And don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier for you to follow the tree. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in the rituals. So then when we start, we want to first of all get this bottom left side like this, then now we want to go to the top right side and get all of these passives. And then finally from here you want to go to this top middle / top left side and get the rest of these passives in no particular order. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Advanced Bombard Crossbow. This is the most important item as you want to acquire a high physical damage crossbow, ideally on this Advanced Bombard Crossbow, or as well you could get it on the Expert Bombard Crossbow, for grenade skills firing an additional projectile. But with that said, if you got a different high physical damage crossbow on another item, then that can work as well, only if the damage is high enough. Then for the helmet, we want the Advanced Pirate Great Helm with armor, and for more stats we want accuracy, even more increased armor and max life. For our main gear we want to get good armor and evasion, and all type of resistances, so then we could cap our resistances at least 75%. Then for the chest we have the Expert Rogue Armor with armor and evasion, and for bonus stats we get max life, more armor and evasion, max life and cold resistance. Then for the belt we have the Utility Belt that recovers our flask 20% quicker. And for bonus stats we want more armor, max life and resistances like fire or lightning. Then for the gloves we got the Expert Layered Gauntlets with max life, max mana, more strength and lightning resistance. Then for boots we're using the Advanced Mail Sabotans with armor and evasion. And for bonus stats it's required that you get some type of movement speed and resistances like cold or chaos. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance, and for more we want the physical damage, max life and max mana. While on the second one we got the Prismatic Ring with percentage to all elemental resistances, and for bonuses we want max life, more accuracy and fire resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Lunar Amulet with max energy shield, and for more we want the increased spell damage, more armor and increased critical hit chance. And now finally let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our detonator skills are the Explosive Shot or the Explosive Grenade, as they are used to detonate the poisonous clouds into the fiery explosions. Then we got the Oil Grenade, which applies a fire exposure and slows down a quick moving enemy. Then we got the Flash Grenade that blinds, stuns and shocks back swarming enemies. Then we also got the Wind Dancer, which will provide a 68% more evasion rating at the 4 Gale Force stages. And finally we use the Ghost Dance with energy shield gear for additional defense versus a hard enemy encounter. So the general gameplay loop of this build is to fire as many gas grenades as necessary towards the target to create a poison cloud. Then next we want to detonate these poison clouds with either the Explosive Shot or the Explosive Grenade. So for more damage we use the Explosive Grenade, and for a quick explosion or to target the edge of the screen poison cloud, then use the Explosive Shot instead. Also, when you are surrounded or to preemptively stun and blind enemies, you can use the Flash Grenade. In boss fights, using a Flash Grenade will stagger and interrupt dangerous abilities, which has saved me many times from dying. This setup is known as the Bonestorm Witch build, and this skill by itself is a slow clearing ability, but with the right gems, passives and synergies, we can make it 100 times better, and this is exactly what we have right here. This build also has 2 variants, so going full crit chance, what I will personally be doing for myself, or then perhaps go with the Detonate a Dead variant, Both of these will excel at different things, so which one you choose is up to you. This variant, so the full crit chance setup, excels at huge amount of damage. We won't be focusing on anything else besides the massive crits and stacking as much life as possible, because the more life/defense we have, the more damage we can do in return. Also, at some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Witch has many tools to address this problem. And with optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear to completely solve this issue. So if you are finally looking for a super fun Blood Mage build that primarily doesn't use the life leech, but instead goes full life and full crit, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Witch, and our ascendancy is the Blood Mage. Then for the first skill we have the Bonestorm, with support gems such as the Brutality, Arcane Tempo, Inevitable Critical and the Super Critical. Then second we got the Bone Cage with the Spell Cascade, Lockdown and the Splinter. Then next we got the Life Remnant with the Vitality, Clarity and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Combat Frenzy with the Profusion, Pin and the Potential. And finally for the last one we got the Bone Blast with no support gems. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage increase node. Then next we want to keep on going like this until we get to our first stop, which is the potent incantation. Then now keep on going to the right side to get this critical exploit. Then now we circle back a little and keep going like this until we get the sudden escalation. Then now from this point we go down like this, then take the right path and keep going until this point, and then keep going all the way up until the tempered mind. Then next we go down a bit and then take right, which will take us all the way to our first keystone, the resonance. Then from this point we want to circle back again and simply get the last two priority nodes called the Power Within and the Last for Power. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we got are important, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, so you just simply want to fill your attribute requirements for the gear and skill gems, and then after that, spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sangumancy, but please don't get it too early. This node is required for every Blood Mage, and this ability does ton of self damage, and it can be quite hard to mitigate this in the early game. So I recommend for you to wait until you complete your second trial, and then take your first and second Ascendancy at the same time. So then after the second trial you want to get the Grasping Wounds. This one will make you significantly tankier and synergize very well with the Sangumancy. So as I said before, get both these Ascendancies at the same time. Then next, take the Gore Spike. This will scale off your maximum life and is a big damage boost. And then finally for the fourth option you want to take the Crimson Power, as this will give you a massive energy shield body armor, and this will also scale really well with our previous Gore Spike. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or the rituals. Our Bonestorm Blood Mage build won't be doing crazy amount of damage against single targets, so we mainly want to do very small farming in boss maps or the essences. So then when we start we want to first of all get this bottom right side like this, then from here go like this until we get all the way to the left side. And then when all of these passives are done, then now we go again to the middle, and now take the middle path and then go a bit to the left again and get all of these nodes. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand with the mana drain, and for the extra bonuses we want increased spell damage, plus 3 levels to all physical spell skills, then also increased critical hit chance and more percentage to critical damage bonus. Next we also have the offhand called the Emblem Crest Shield, with the armor and energy shield. This specific shield is the best job that I got, but it's not required. However, for bonuses we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Remember that our main goal is to stack as much life and resistances as possible, so that's why you will see few stats repeating all over again. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vicar Tiara with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Guild Vestments with the armor and energy shield. And for bonus stats we need max life, evasion rating and the fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the Rawhide belt with the increased recovery to the flask, and for the extras we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for the gloves we got the torn gloves with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, increased armor and evasion. Then for boots we're using the bushwhack with the evasion. For this build we will need to get these boots or use the pin gem on our combat frenzy. So which option you prefer, it's up to you. But if you have the pin, then the boots are not required, but still very powerful. So get it or not, but at least go with as high movement speed as possible. Then also get evasion rating and more to dexterity. Then for the first ring, get the ruby ring with fire resistance. And for more we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. While on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, and for more get max life, fire or lightning resistance. And finally for the amulet, get the solar amulet with more to spirit and max life. No matter which gear you choose, at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. Our main rotation will be the same, no matter if you choose to go with the full crit or the detonator variant. So for weak enemies we simply want to choose a target, and then just spam the Bonestorm with the bone cage. And then for bosses or elites we still do the same thing, just this time also integrate the bone blast with the Bonestorm and the bone cage, and it's that easy. Most of our buffs will work in the background, which will give us the real damage, so then all you have to do is get used to the mechanics, which are mainly to use the channeling trick, then to be kiting enemies 24/7 and pick up the life remnants. And then from here just spam the Bonestorm and the bone cage and have fun.